As a software engineering leader, have you ever considered what level you're at? How do you get to the next level? What compares one level to the next? Well, today I have the co-founder of CTO Levels, Kathy Keating, on the podcast. We're going to talk about that and her new book, Liquid, which is related to the levels. And it's a great conversation about, as a leader, figuring out where you are and how do you get to the next level and all the different kinds of leadership. We also talk about how product and engineering being separated really is kind of screwed up to engineering because we all really work on the product team. Fantastic conversation today. You don't want to miss on the Product Driven podcast. To survive and thrive, you must adopt a product-driven mindset. And we're back for another episode of Product Driven. This is your host, Matt Watson. Excited to be joined today by Kathy Keating. She's done all the things, guys. Product, engineering, CTO advisor, author of a brand new book called Liquid, we're going to talk about today, co-founder of a cool framework called CTO Levels. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we've exchanged messages a couple times on LinkedIn and Slack, and what brought us together today is we both wrote, I think, very similar books, like slightly different viewpoints and different writing styles and whatever, but both of them about product and engineering challenges. I guess to get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book, Liquid?
Yeah, so Liquid is our first book around the CTO Levels framework. So if you know anything about that, go to ctolevels.com. It's a whole framework for how to do the CTO or technology leadership role. And we wanted to introduce the concepts that are in the framework called the Sentinels. We think that there's 4 emerging qualities that every effective product engineering organization has. They are speed, stretch, shield, and sales. We could talk about what those are in a minute. Speed is the most common. If you're a well-functioning organization, you have speed. You deliver at speed, right? So Liquid is the first introduction of the Sentinels and how the Sentinels are the things that arise when a company is working effectively. And so Liquid is a systems thinking book. It tackles the concepts of complexity. It understands that a business is a complex adaptive system. What you do within the business influences the business, the system operating under the business, to either move toward boiling or move toward freezing, right? But if we want to be an effectively run business, we have to stay liquid. So Liquid, that's where the title Liquid came in. And we introduced concepts to recognize complexity in the business and how to move it back to liquid.
Well, I love the idea of the levels, and we're all at a different level, right? Like we're all at somewhere on the spectrum of things, of lots of things in life. We're on the spectrum of lots of things in life. But you know what? I think we need to back up for a second. And what does a CTO do? Like that's a loaded question. What does a CTO do in your opinion? You're an advisor to CTOs. You got CTO levels, you all these things. What is your definition of what a CTO does?
Oh, so my definition off the cuff here is a CTO's job is to clear the way from a technology strategy perspective for the business to thrive.
Okay.
So it's a very vague. I believe a CTO is a catalyst within the organization. They need to be the person that helps other C-suites and other leaders understand how technology can enable success within the business, the outcomes.
I think that's the key, right? How do we leverage technology?
Key, right? So as a CTO, I'm almost never just stuck in my technology world. I'm always out in the business determining how we make that vision the business has to get to reality. So
in the process of writing Product Driven, one of the things I came up with along the way that I included in the book, and love to get your impromptu feedback here, is there's really 4 types of engineering leadership roles. There's strategic, operational, technical, and product. Those are the 4 that I came up with anyways.
Okay.
And I think those are kind of 4 different types, and nobody is all 4. I will probably die on the hill that nobody is all 4 of those. You might be 2 or 3 of you were not all 4 of them. I would probably die on that hill. Like you might be really good at 2 or 3 of them and not so good at 1 or 2 of them. What do you think of that?
Yeah, there's definitely the things that you do well and the things that you don't do well, right? As a person, right? Or
Yeah.
the things that you thrive at and the things that you have to work at, right? So
And-
I do believe that as we get further along in our career, we figure out how to either cope with certain areas, build playbooks to handle
Mhm.
certain areas, or and then there's other areas that we thrive in. So as we get further along in our career, we maybe might master more and more of those areas. But you're right. This is why there's typically what we call three streams of a business. There's a lot of research out there that you can get into around the streams of a business. But one is the customer, which is sales and marketing, right? The other is product engineering, right? Or big P product, right? Make sure the product it lives. And then the other is more operational business side of the
Mhm.
world. And so if you think about a business from the three streams of a business, most of us, as we become C-suites or leaders, we anchor into one part of that. But I believe strategy is everyone, and I believe operations is everyone. You have to be strategic, and if you're a C-suite, you have to be strategic and you have to be operational. It's the two aspects of that role.
But what's interesting though, as you say that, like the three streams, and I love the three streams that you mentioned. And if you look at the engineering team as a whole, all three of those streams kind of live in the engineering team, right? You
Totally.
bring those into the engineering team. And that's one of the things I wrote about in the book is just like in a company, you have like a CEO who's very visionary, big picture, high level, strategic. And then you have people that are more like a chief operating officer. They're very operational. They're the detail, people,
Totally.
process, team management. Those are different personalities of people. Like the people that do both of those things are not usually the same people. It's really rare, right?
Yeah, it is pretty rare. You have to put on your different hats, right? I know when I put my strategic hat on versus my
Yeah,
operational hat, I do see it as like I'm taking one hat off and putting another on. It's still, I always say I'm not your visionary, I'm your executor. So
sure.
I fall into that
I'm the
operator role.
opposite.
Yeah, give me that idea and I can run with it, right?
Yeah.
And then I know other people who are like can't operate their way out of a paper bag, right? So,
Well, that's the problem with a lot of CTOs is I go back to the four types that I gave. One of them being technical. A lot of them are really brilliant technical, terrible at operations, terrible at strategy, maybe not even good at product or customer, but they're really sharp technical, right? But they're basically like a software architect. They got given the role of
right.
CTO. And I bet that's probably a lot of the people you end up helping advise, getting them to think bigger, right? They have to think outside of that box. But
Yeah.
but when you think about what we've been talking about, like different roles and different people, how does that map back to CTO levels? Take us back to CTO levels. Think about like the big strategic part of it, operational part of it. How does that map back to levels in your book?
Yeah, so if you look at the sentinels, which are the four columns, they more or less align to very similarly to your areas, right? So speed is really about process. What's the process we have that lets us work efficiently and leanly? And then sales is more of maybe in your world, the operational aspects of it, right? How do I tell a story? How do I make a case for something? And then Shield to me is really the Shield Sentinel is really the technical side of it. What's your tech stack? How are you leveraging data? How are you protecting the business from a security and compliance perspective? That gets into a lot of the technology side of it. And then the stretch is always be growing, right? So that to me is that's maybe something that might be coded differently in your book is as leaders we always have to be growing because we join a company when it's small, that company's going to get larger, right? And so that's if you think of as you go up from level 0 to level 10 in the CTO levels framework, uh, you're always growing with the business, but most people tap out at a particular level. We do know that something like 50% of CTOs get fired. The average tenure is 2 years. And that's largely because a company is growing and they tap out, they get too far above their skis, and they haven't built the skills at those higher levels, right? And so to me, strategy becomes more important or gets harder as you go up the levels, right?
So I've got another loaded question for you, and I'll give you my answer, but I want to hear yours first. How do you become a CTO?
Someone gives you the title. I mean, you have to balance all these aspects, right? Strategy, operations, you have to, understand the technology enough to be able to guide the technology in the proper direction. You have to keep the business calm, which is where Liquid comes in, right? Keep the business calm. Don't let it boil. Don't let it freeze. Make sure it's got the rhythm, right? So it's the people who are the most effective CTOs are the ones who understand all aspects of that work and can really lead across those and understand where the complexity is coming in and how to mitigate the risk related to that complexity.
But the challenge is if you're a great software engineering manager, director, whatever the role, you get to kind of some kind of middle management. How do you go from there to CTO? Like that's essentially it's a big leap. And like a lot of things in life, I feel like my best analogy is like you don't learn to swim by reading the book.
No.
Right?
No,
you learn it by doing it.
Yeah,
but
you have
for most
to immerse
people,
yourself.
they never get the opportunity. And so I did a poll one day asking people how they became a CTO. And what do you think the answer was for 50% of them?
I founded my own company.
Started my own company.
Yeah.
Like that was
I founded my own company too. I'm on my 4th company now, but yeah, there it is. And there is something fascinating that when you go to an early stage, whether you're the founder or not, in that first technology role, you get trial by fire. You all of a sudden have to do all these things. And if you're lucky, your company is growing.
And all those things matter all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, which is why
because in a big company, it seems like nothing matters.
Right. And the big company, a lot of the CTOs at big companies, actually, many of them aren't as technical.
Right.
Right. Because they're very operational. They understand technology enough to be operational. They get very budget focused.
They're like accountants.
Initiatives focused, right? So they understand the technology world. And so they might have grown up in larger companies. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the way you become a CTO for most people is you found your own company or come in early stage, grow, fail at some point, and come back and grow again. Yeah. And each time you fail or struggle and opt out, you might step back a level. So we talk about this a lot in CTO levels. You got to level 4. Now you're going to step back to level 3 and go to level 6. Now you're going to step back to level 5 and go to 9, right? It's because you have to relearn sometimes or strengthen yourself at certain levels before you can go to the next higher company. Because as we know, companies get harder and harder as they grow.
Well, and maybe you don't want to work in those kind of companies, right? Like I don't think I wouldn't
love startups. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be the CTO of some giant company where I basically feel like the accountant that manages budgets.
Yeah.
Like that's not exciting to me. Like I want to innovate. I want to build cool shit. Where can I do that? Right?
Yeah. And you might want to go back and get really good at building cool shit, right? But
that's a different job.
Yeah. Yeah. And the job of a CTO is different at each level of company too, right? There's some things like, are you doing acquisitions? Like if you're a level 7 to a level 9, you're doing acquisitions, you're, building strategic partnerships, but you're rarely doing that at a level 2 company, right? Where you've only got 2 engineers and you're seeking product market fit.
It's a totally different job.
Totally different. You're focusing on proof of concepts and MVPs and just getting your product process lean and iterative, right? Very different job. It doesn't mean you don't do those other things. It's just the chance of you doing them is very little.
You're doing technology strategy at a different level, right? You're like if you're at some billion-dollar company, the technology strategy might be, do we acquire this thing, right? Do we do this big partnership? We do this, whatever. You're making strategy decisions at a higher and higher and higher level. And some of those might, I don't know, are not as exciting to me, but yeah.
Yeah, it's all different. I mean, I've had teams from obviously me when I founded all the way up to over 450. So like I've seen all those different levels and everything
Yeah.
in between, and it's fascinating. There's stuff I love about each level and there's stuff I don't. So like today I won't go into an early stage startup anymore where I am in my career, but I'll coach that all the time. I'll coach and advise there, but I really don't want to be in that kind of business. It's not something that for me on a day-to-day basis is interesting. For me, it's that mid-market where you hit scale up and you hit a dead end because you don't have lean effective process.
Well,
Uh,
when you're early stage, it's more of like, is this thing going to work or not going to work? And that's kind of like a really painful thing to deal with. It can be really exciting, really fun, but it's kind of painful. Versus your point, you're like, hey, I'm working with somebody that has built something super amazing. They just don't know how to scale it, right? They just don't know how to
yeah.
get it to the next level. And I know how to get it to the next level, and I can help them do that.
And one of the big challenges at that scaling moment is you have to capitalize on the right changes to your system, your business, at the right time. You don't want to wait too long and you don't want to make change too early. It's a very delicate process. And what most people don't realize, or what I see, the failure I see many CEOs make, is they think that there's a simple solution to a complex problem. And there's no simple solution to a complex problem, right? You have to influence the system to move. And that means lots of systematic changes over the course of many months to influence the system. Just imagine cultural complexity. Let's say you have a bad culture and you want to have a better culture. You don't just have a meeting with the company and say, hey, we're going to have a better culture now, right? You have to build trust, and trust builds over time, right? So that's an example of cultural complexity. It's why we talk in Liquid about how do you bring it from boiling, which is the bad culture, back to calm, which is the liquid culture, right? The effective flow, right? And when we can stay in effective flow, that's when all the magic happens.
So going back to the question earlier about how to be a CTO, I think I want to follow up on your advice about working in a smaller company. And I
Yeah.
think my advice to anybody who is listening that is a software engineer at any level, if you really want to get to the next level of your career, go work for the smallest company you can find.
Totally.
Because you have to wear all the hats, learn all the things, do all the things. And you mentioned this earlier, right? It's like the bigger the company you work at, the smaller your role.
Yes.
And I don't know if I'd ever heard it said so succinctly. It's a great way to put it. And when you're a really small company, your role is huge. Like,
Yes.
and I post all the time about like a lot of software engineers are so focused on the code and they're not so focused on the customer. And it's like I posted on Threads the other day something along the lines of like, if you don't think the customer matters, like go start your own company.
Yeah.
You're gonna figure out
Oh,
real fast how much the
real
customer
fast.
matters. A
Yeah.
lot,
Super
right?
fast, right?
But a lot of
Um,
software developers, they miss that part of it. And I wanna go back to another topic that we touched on before we started recording was, earlier in our careers, say 25 years ago and beyond, software engineering was a lot different,
yeah.
right? Like it changed a lot. Like 20 years ago, probably the start of agile and stuff kind of took us down a different path, which there were some pros to, but also some cons. What is your take on the way that things used to be done versus the way that they're done
The way
now?
they used to be, right? So I was pre-internet. I started pre-internet. And so I've seen a lot of change. And so it used to be software engineers, our role was product too. Like there was no product owner. There was project managers, which managed, back then it was waterfall, right? Um, so I managed the project plan or the Gantt chart. But if we wanted to solve a problem, we went out and we talked to the customer. So in my first job, I was actually building commercial AI in the mobile telecom space before the internet. And so we had to go talk to customers because we were building this fraud product for mobile telecom. I flew all over the world to talk to CTOs at mobile telecoms, and I'd immerse with their companies for weeks to understand their problems as an engineer so that we could go build their tech. And that was very common until probably the .com surge when the internet hit and internet started to take on reality and companies grew, this new role called product formed. And then of course, Agile came shortly after that, right?
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting transformation. But still, product managers lived within engineering. And it wasn't until probably the mid-aughts after Agile when we started seeing product and engineering bifurcate. And so I think that was like the biggest challenge that we've had, is that now you have two siloed organizations that really are one stream. Product can't deliver without engineering. Engineering can't deliver without product. So it's a symbiotic relationship. And yet we've siloed the two streams. And so why are we surprised that we have operational issues pretty regularly in almost every product and engineering organization? Is because the siloing actually is trying to split a stream that needs to be unified.
Well, I have another take on that. Along that is, I feel like software engineering has always been the slowest and most expensive part, right? I think it's easy to agree on that.
Yeah.
Software engineering has been slow and expensive. So we did all these other things around them, right? From product management, QA, DevOps, whatever, all these different things. We all these things so we could get the software developers more in the basement, more in the dark, more heads down, like mushrooms in the basement, writing code.
Do what I tell you to do.
Because they were the slowest, most expensive part. And then we wonder why they don't know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And they're not super motivated in the basement, in the dark.
But a lot of those teams want to operate leanly too. And so the thing I hear often from product is, I don't want to have to write down the requirements. I should just be able to talk to the engineer. Well, that's the least effective way of communicating requirements, is to talk verbally to somebody and think that they've captured the 20 minutes you've just regurgitated toward them, right? Yes, you should write requirements down. Yes, it doesn't have to be verbose, right? But at least you should communicate in a form that can be referred to, right? If you're going to split those roles, then you have to make sure that there's clear communication between those roles. And right now, I just see a lot of companies, failing in that regard. It's the most common thing I come in and fix when I come into a turnaround situation.
Is how do we get product and engineering working together as one?
Yeah, leanly and effectively, right?
Well, and how is AI impacting that from your perspective? Because if software developers are twice as productive now, supposedly, does that mean they need stand up twice a day?
Oh, gosh. I hope not. So I personally think that all the onerous process we do is to actually cover for the fact that we're not operating effectively.
There you go.
So you talked about two stand-ups a day, right? Or what did I have one CTO tell me at one point? You've got to give me a summary every day of what everyone on your team did. Well, that's because there's lack of trust or whatever, or they don't understand and they need to understand, right? So most onerous process is put in place because people want to control the situation. And the worst thing you can do in a business is try to control the situation.
You want to create ownership instead.
Step back and inspire and influence, right? But the first area we go is to control. Do more of the thing that strangles you and strangles your team. So,
well, as you know, big part of the problem is managing humans is a messy, complicated process, and some are better than others at their job. Some follow directions, some don't. Some show up to work, some don't. Humans are difficult to deal with, so I get it, right? And the bigger a company gets, the harder that problem becomes. So.
Well, and the more I think we can inspire people. So you talked about AI. How does AI help this, right? If engineers had curiosity, which of course we want engineers to have curiosity, which is to me what, as I read Product Driven, your book, for me.
You read my book?
I did. Well, the parts you gave me, right?
All right. Woohoo!
To me, it's all about that engineer having curiosity to want to understand why they're doing what they're doing and what are the problems that they're actually solving. Because the task that's been given to you for writing the code is not the problem being solved. It's the task, and the problem being solved is a collection of tasks. But what drives the problem to be solved. If we had more curiosity, then we'd have engineers, let's say, going to ChatGPT or whatever their tool is and asking, here's a good one I did the other day. How should a payroll system work? Right? Like, again, have curiosity about what you're trying to solve and understand how those systems solve those problems. And then working back from that to say, hey, there's missing requirements here. Shouldn't we be doing X, Y, Z, right? That's where more curiosity comes in. And if you go back to CTO levels, that's the whole stretch column, right? We need to stretch ourselves. We need to get out of our comfort zones. One thing I talk a lot about, which I think is part of the problem companies experience now, is that the first few years of our engineering job is an apprenticeship. We're just learning the language of code, right? So we get in the mode where everyone's giving us tasks and we go code them, right? That builds a habit of, you should tell me what to do.
Yes.
And now you're turned to a senior engineer, you get promoted, all of a sudden, like, your job is to be, think out of the box, problem solve, and you've spent years being told what to do. Like, that's a problem. Senior engineers need to build all new skills around curiosity, leaning in, understanding the problem, and no one teaches them that. There's just this expectation they know how to do it, but it doesn't get taught when you turn into a senior engineer. And so books like yours, which lean into, hey, engineer, you need to be curious about this, to me are really critical to really reframe the role of the senior engineer, the staff engineer, and of course, those that are fortunate enough to make it all the way to CTO, right?
I think the point to AI is it is blurring the lines of all of this too, and product and engineering roles are kind of blurring together. And I don't know, it's an interesting world as we go forward, right? Are any of us going to have a job, or does AI write all the code and we're all extinct? I don't think so.
But fascinating thing that we still need all of our senior people, but AI is eliminating the junior roles. And that's going to be an interesting aspect as we go forward, cast forward 10 years, when we have less juniors coming in, but still have the need for seniors. I don't know. For me, that's the biggest worry. So.
Well, I posted about this on LinkedIn this week. It's like, it's a catch-22 for entry-level developers, right? Do you lean in heavy on AI to help write all the code, but you don't necessarily know exactly what all the code does, versus you're writing all the code and not using AI as much, so you really understand how it all works. Like, that's a real, like, delicate balance there as you're trying to learn the profession. Like, that's hard.
Yeah, and ChatGPT can't architect for you.
No. Or understand the product or the problem or the customer.
We hear all these people talk about, oh, I vibe coded something over the weekend. You vibe coded like a simple function, right? That isn't actually a SaaS, that doesn't actually solve big complex problems. And big complex problems are complex. And part of complexity is that there's known stuff and there's unknown stuff. And, ChatGPT doesn't do a really good job yet of handling that complexity. So there's always gaps.
Well, and that's another thing that is almost part of your CTO levels, right? Is like, what level of ambiguity can you deal with?
Totally.
Right? Like, the higher you go up, you're the one who has to solve all of the problems, all the clarity of all the things, right? You have to solve all the ambiguity. When you're at the lowest level, somebody's just telling you what to do.
That's right? Exactly Liquid is like looking at the complexity of the system and trying to turn it into an action plan.
Yeah.
Right? Is really, you're right. It's all about ambiguity. I feel like I'm faced with ambiguity every single day and have to bring it into reality. So.
And some people can thrive really well in that and some don't. Like, I always describe myself as like, I'm the person that you could probably drop into any problem, don't tell me anything, and I would figure out what questions to ask, and I would figure it out. You don't have to tell me anything. Yeah. I will figure it all out. I will figure it out. A lot of people would have no way to do that. They would
freeze, right? A lot of people freeze in that, right? I don't know where to start. You need to tell me what to do.
To me, it kind of sounds fun.
I know. I don't know. Once you like, it all gets back to go back and start a company, right? Go found a company because
Yeah.
that's all ambiguity. That's all. We
Yeah.
don't know the problem. We got to figure it out.
I thrive in
And
that.
yeah, I thrive in that, but it's exhausting too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I get another 10, 15 years of my career catch up with you. I'm probably, I might be done with it too. Well, tell us, I want, as we wrap up this show today, I want to tell me a little more about CTO levels and Liquid. But so CTO levels, is that a free resource is it an ebook? Like what is CTO levels? Is it a survey? Like tell us a little more about it.
So CTO Levels is free. Right now you go to our website, you can get to the framework, you can consume all the levels, and there's a bunch of playbooks behind each of the blocks. But think about a level, like level 0 is I am the first programmer at my company, and what do I need to focus on? It's like code, tech stack, proof of concepts, being a catalyst, which is the mindset of growth, right? All the way up to companies over 400, which is level 10, where you're really getting into like thought leadership, industry leadership, right? And so you pick the size of your company, you find yourself on the grid, and you have to be an expert at all the blocks from that level and down, right?
But does this relate to anybody that's in engineering leadership, even if they're not a CTO?
Yeah,
Like they're
yeah.
still at the bottom of this somewhere, right?
If you're a director and you have a team of 20, you just find that line on the grid and
Okay.
you hold responsibility for everything on that level down. It's uncanny how it works. And then so yes, so there's playbooks, there's definitions for each block, there's information about how do you know you're on the right track with that block and how do you know you're off track. And then we also offer a foundational assessment. It's a 50-question comprehensive assessment that companies can purchase, which is like I think it's like 60-page report that comes out of it. It's 50
Holy moly.
questions for the first 4 levels. We call it the foundations assessment. And companies come to us to do those kind of assessments to understand where their company is at and where they need to grow. And so
Okay.
for each block, we give you a red, yellow, green and an action plan for how to level up. And so we've had hundreds and hundreds of CTOs and technology leaders take that assessment and implement the action plan. And then they come back months or a year later, redo it, and they're much stronger as an organization.
So then how does Liquid fit into this? So your new book, Liquid, comes out around August 19th.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when this will air, but it'll probably be a similar time frame.
Yeah.
Tell us about Liquid and how that fits into this.
So Liquid is the column. So there's 4 columns, speed, stretch, shield, and sales on CTO levels. Those are the emerging properties that we see in companies that are well-oiled machines that work effectively. And so Liquid is about how to stay liquid across those 4 sentinels, speed, stretch, shield, and sales, so that you can work effectively and move effectively up the levels as your company grows. So it really takes that slice vertically across the levels and talks to those sentinels. So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate so much having you on the show. It's pretty cool. We wrote sort of similar books, different books, but related topics, and product driven. Launched July 17th. You can get a copy of that on Amazon, and pick up a copy of Kathy's book. Liquid will be available after August 19th. So.
Yeah. Great. Well, it's awesome to chat with you, Matt.
All right. Thank you so much for doing this with me today. Before we wrap up today's episode, we have a special resource for you if you're looking to elevate your development team to have more of a product-driven mindset. I have a fantastic free ebook about turning your code-first team into a product-first team. Please go to fullscaleteam.com/product-first-teams to download this free ebook. There's also a link in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Product Driven, and we'll see you in the next episode.